everyone. It's Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak, and we certainly do that talk. Uh, I hope it's real for you, and I hope it helps. Um, Guys, good morning. I hope you all are having a good week. The energy is kind of wonky out there right now. It's very strange. This has been a strange week. A lot going on under the surface. So we are here to talk about being happy through it all and authenticity. And through authenticity primarily, because really we do so many things trying not to be authentic because we don't think we're good enough, or we are trying to hide, or we are pushing because of all sorts of things. And the truth is we are good enough. And more than that, that's all we've got, and we better make the most of it. So that's what the show's about, your potential. We're here for a reason. I was talking to some friends of mine yesterday about this, that we are here for a reason. Sometimes it's a collective reason. Most of the time it's an individual reason. And a lot of times it's both. So here we are. Guys, let's do a quick prayer, get us all on the same page, and we'll launch off. We've already got some people holding. Now, I have this strong suspicion that they are holding to hear the show. So let me say this to everybody before we do our prayer, and that is that we have a guest call-in number. The guest call-in number is 347-850-1647. And that actually gets you on the air. It's going to get you to talk to me. I'm going to click over to those numbers to see if they want to talk to me. I'm suspicious because there's usually an indication that that's what's going on, and there's no indication. So I don't know whether they'll be there or not. But that number, 347-850-1647, is so you can talk to me directly on the air. If you just want to listen, a really good way to do that is to get on my website, Martha Novak, and to go under radio shows, and you'll see Facebook Live, or you'll see Blog Talk Radio, and you have buttons to punch there. That should take you into the live show. Let me know if it does not, because it should take you right in. I say let me know if it does not, because I have one friend that said she was feeding into old shows, not new shows. And of course, we really want you to feed into this one when you punch those buttons. What we're doing today, live and in person. So there we are. Okay, I hope that explains it all. You can also find me on Martha Novak, Novak, on Facebook, Live and Blog Talk Radio. I don't know how you get into the live feed from there, but I'm sure there's a way. Okay. All right, here we go. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity we have to be together. We are thrilled to be sitting here today under the banner of wanting to know more about ourselves, which is more about you. For as we release these old issues and blocks and needs to hold on to them, what we find is you, the person we have always been in the energy of God. We are the aspect of God known as us right now, and we are appreciative of that. We ask to trust that more, to get us out of our own way, so that we may live dynamic lives, giving whatever it is that we're supposed to give before we move on to the next adventure. We thank you so much for all of this, dear God. And so it is. All right. So, we've been talking about a lot of things. This has been part of a series. I think you'll still enjoy the show today, even if you haven't listened to the series, but I do want you to encourage you to go back and listen to it, because we're already on number 46. And there's been a lot of information in this series of all kinds. So here we go. We're talking about how to be happier. One of the big things is how well you handle stress. There's a good handling of stress and there's a bad handling of stress. And we can take this COVID-19 thing as an example. I have a friend who is a dear friend who's a doctor, and I sent one of my patients to her because I thought she needed some physical work. Indeed she did. And when she walked in to this doctor's office, she sprayed every surface. The doctor called me afterwards and said, I just thought you ought to know this. And it was very nice because this client of mine also said to me, let me tell you what I did that I think was over the top. I think my fear is too much. And you know what? It was a lovely thing. I love it when I get clients to that place where they become self-aware. You remember that that's like one of the first things on my list. You have to be self-aware. All of these things tend to block self-awareness, but self-awareness, let me tell you, anybody's going to tell you that deals in any kind of authenticity or lectures about it, they're all going to tell you self-awareness is key, you see? So I love it when clients, it's not so much what clients do, but all of a sudden they become aware of the reasons for doing it, and then they tell me it's over the top. My fear is out of control about this. That's great. Then we can do something about it. What's difficult to me, and I'm a little off the subject, but not really, is when clients come to me and they're hiding everything. And they're not telling me, here's what I did. I think it might have been over the top. Or was it over the top? You know, when they come in and they pretend everything is normal and their childhood was just great and everything was just great, that's usually when I have to go to work real hard, because then I have to take away all the self-deception, and sometimes there are years of it, really, to get us to a very honest place. And remember, we talked about last week, learning to be honest, emotionally honest, emotionally honest. Okay, so there are people that have never learned to handle stress well. Certainly, everybody is stressed in their childhood for one reason or another. Childhood's tough stuff, okay? Sometimes our very homes make it tough. Sometimes people outside our homes make it tough. Sometimes people outside our homes make it tough because we are not facing the stuff inside our homes that are tough. Why do we not do that? Remember what I said last week. We normalize what's happening to us. If we normalize it and say, in our perceptions, oh, this goes on in every home, then we can stand it a little more, right? Okay. Maybe you weren't supposed to stand it, at least not now. Number two, we normalize. What we do is generalize. Then we say, well, all of life is like that. All women are like that. All men are like that. Are they? And the third thing we do is we'll elevate our issues and what we're doing and what motivates us to lofty positions. This becomes what God wants us to do, to be good people, right? That is not true, by the way. I think anybody's God, an idea of God, would tell you that what they want are honest, authentic people, because that's where one becomes loving, kind, generous, helps people, but not at the expense of themselves. It's a win-win generally. I think that's a real important thing to learn now. When we're stressed and we don't handle it well, see, stress isn't the bad thing. It's what we're doing to handle it. A lot of people do something that they think is very, very good. I've had people bold-faced look at me and said, I don't want to lose this. This is a good thing. And it's avoidance. And the fact is, it helps a child through bad times. As an adult, we can give you examples of it killing you. You cannot avoid. the truth comes out in some way. I just heard this week about a person who was very confusing to my client. It was her father, and he was her only ally, she felt, because she didn't like her mom. Okay? And her sister and her mother were like that. So she fantasized, she had a fantasy father in her head. She completely doesn't recall, doesn't remember at all the father that was real. The father that was real stuffed his emotions and exploded constantly and beat the hell out of everybody. She doesn't have one recall about that. And yet she lives like she had that father. So she's finally gotten in her work, and I'm thrilled, to the point now where she is collecting information from her sister, her mother has passed, from her aunts, from anybody that remembers. And they all remember what she's forgotten. And we've spent years getting here for her to really now accept the truth, even though she's not going to recall it. That man was her only ally, and she fantasized about him so she could keep him. And about herself, by the way, and about all of life. And now, and she's perfectly beautiful, she's smart, she's talented, she's creative, she's all these things, much of them suppressed, but they're beginning to come up. And what's very interesting right now is she has not been able to find a man that she really, really loves and cares about, and who loves and cares about her, because she's been wearing this kind of mask. She goes into fantasy like she did with Dad, you see. We must face these things and realize life as it is. So handling stress when you're a child, you do certain things. One of them is create a whole fantasy life that has nothing to do with reality. You may be fantasy, God may be fantasy, the family unit may be fantasy, mother fantasy, dad fantasy, everybody fantasy. So what happens when you're trying to create a real relationship? You can only start the beginning of it because it's all fantasy. And fantasy, whether you marry somebody or not, out of fantasy is all going to fall apart because it's not real. Fantasy falls apart. And before that happens, historical reality comes smashing up against it over and over and over again. You're not supposed to have it. It's a survival tool when we're kids. You have it as an adult. How it's supposed to look in your potential is you write fantasy, you act fantasy, you use it in the creative arts, you paint and draw fantasy and sculpt fantasy, and you use fantasy in your creativity. That way you may use it. You may be in a business that uses it. But you don't have it in your personal life. It's the cause of a lot of unhappiness. Fantasy. So that's one of the ways that it can come out. It can come out a variety of other ways. You could grow up a very angry person, not facing the truth of things, not handling stress well. I know a lot of people who are OCD because they don't handle stress well, so they have to control everything. If they control everything and control what you're thinking and how the people that are around them and their lives, they don't have that much stress in them, right? I remember a very narcissistic dear man that I knew at one point who very proudly told me how he controlled everything so he didn't have to deal with emotion. But you're supposed to deal with emotion. You have 3 learning and communication experiences. Your mental body that takes in information and processes everything in a very mental fashion, no emotion involved, just fact and thought. Then you have the emotional part of you, which is all about feeling and nothing but, no thought involved. And by the way, People get these things mixed up, don't they? They get thinking and feeling mixed up. I remember doing a corporate job years ago, and I was sitting by a man who's just gotten fired from his work, but everybody liked him so much, this company voted to have me work with him a while, get him on his feet, get him going again, right? And I said, how do you feel about this being fired business? And he gave me a very mental answer. Oh, I can see why they did it. It's because of this and this and this. Really? Okay. How do you feel about being fired? Oh, well, you know, what companies do is they make decisions this way, as if I didn't know that. And I said, okay, how do you feel about being fired? And he started again with the, you know, the abstractions, the platitudes. And I said, no, wait a minute. Let's talk about how you feel. Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you disappointed? Who are you disappointed in? Etc., etc., etc. Those now, my dears, are feelings. That's the emotional part of you, right? That's the part of you that takes in, learns, and communicates emotionally. Just like there's a part of you that learns and communicates mentally. And the third part of your experience is the physical body. We call it the mover aspect. It's the part of you that learns and communicates through the physical body. And everything has a high and low, you see, that we're talking about. I have a very low mover. My mental aspect and my emotional aspect very high. My mover aspect down. But you can see it really strongly in somebody like a Sylvester Stallone, who is a mover aspect. He gets things out in his body. Marlon Brando was a mover aspect as well. It's all about his body. I remember in one scene, I think it was Rocky V, God knows, I didn't see them all, but I think there's a scene in Rocky V. He gets bad news, and he gets it in his neck. So, you know, as soon as he gets it, he does that. It's the last thing I'd do. I'd be going, whoo, you know? Okay. You understand what I'm talking about. You can't throw emotion out just because you've had a bad experience. The other side of the coin is you've got to learn what emotion can do for you. Very important. Because what happens if you had, let's say, a highly emotional early childhood home, and you have also had a very suppressed emotional early childhood home, you have learned to suppress emotion. First of all, if you came from a highly emotional childhood home, you're probably trying to control it if you yourself are not the emotional type, right? And all that emotion scares you. It certainly scared me. I remember walking into a friend's a waiting room full of people. They were all friends and family of this man who had a part of his lung taken out. He had cancer. And I walked into, I can't even tell you what I walked into. Drama City. That's all I can say. I've never seen so much drama in life. There was weeping, there was wailing, there was carrying on, crying, you know, hugging. And I walked into this. Now, keep in mind, while my feeler is high, I do other things first, I think first. So I thought he died. I wouldn't express that much emotion unless maybe, you know, I was faced with him dying. People just were crazy. And so what a reasoner does, that's what I'm calling the mental aspect, is they move the emotion away until they can understand, well, he wasn't dead. He had just come out of the operation, and they'd gotten a call that he was out of the operation, and people were carrying it on that way because he was in recovery. Okay. Drama is another way to handle stress. But it's not my way to handle stress. And it is a lot of people's way to handle stress. It's not a particularly good way to handle stress, ladies and gentlemen. Because Drama will creep into everything. It comes in, for example, when you don't know how to handle something. I'll venture to say that as dramatic and histrionic and everything as everybody in that room was, they are not good at talking emotion, at really feeling it, at dealing with it without stress. They're dealing with it. It's very stressful, and that's why they get histrionic, because it expends anxiety, doesn't it? But there are better ways. There are more enlightened ways, there are more self-aware ways to handle that. So, as we age, we're supposed to get wiser. So what happens to people that decide they're not going to? Well, this comes out a lot of ways. I mean, not just remaining chronic fantasists, not just remaining chronically angry and bitter, not just remaining cut off from your emotions, and because you are dealing with it with a lot of drama that looks like you're having the real emotions, but it really isn't about that. You can go into a chronic anxiety because you're not allowing yourself to be who you really are at your essence. Life is a lot simpler than we make it. We've learned to distort it all to hell. But what if you sit there and you just say, man, I'm sad. Or man, in this case, I am so glad that he came through the surgery. This is great. Now, the next step is, let's find out what the prognosis is for him. Let's find out what we can expect and what we can do for him and what he can do for himself from now on. Let's get it all together. Now, this is all this more reasoner aspect, okay? But those things need to be accomplished. When this man did die, and we knew he was dying for several days, because of this very emotional family, I walked into the room. Not one person had called the funeral home. Not one person had picked out a casket. Not one person had made arrangements with the graveside. Nobody had written an obituary. Nothing had been done. Everybody was just hysterical. Somebody needs to pull it together, guys. See? There are things that need to happen. Now, the thing that I'm saying right now is that we can be a reasoner and a feeler and a mover in whatever combination. That's great. Your gifts are going to come out of that combination. But don't you forget that you're all three of those things. And all three of them need to be integrated. Just like while I have a low mover, you think I don't go out and walk from time to time, that I don't go swimming, that I don't go kayaking. I do those things. Do I do them like an Arnold Schwarzenegger would? I do not. I do them to my level of what I need. One of the things that gives us a lot of stress, though, is that we don't know what we need. We've never investigated this. We've never realized that you have a need, a genuine need, as a balanced human being. Oh, you're well aware of your cravings and your needs as the ego child's mind. I want what I want when I want it and how I want it. That's the way the child's mind usually works. And sometimes there's an entitlement. Sometimes there is a narcissism that comes from not feeling entitled. So they make themselves entitled, right? We do all sorts of distortions. When really this is about, what do I need? What do I need to eat? How much exercise do I do? Do I need to feel, do I need to exercise right now? I have a woman who drives herself to do things she should do. I need to exercise. Instead of, is this the day to do it? Do I feel well enough? No, I've had 2 hours sleep. This isn't the day to do it, she says. Good for her. That's important. And it's important for you to know when you're giving yourself excuses and when there's a genuine, blooming, beautiful need to meet that only you alone can meet. That's going to take a lot of stress off, okay? Being self-aware, being honest, take a lot of stress off. Now, here I am doing exactly what I object to with other programs, which is this isn't as easy as turning on a light switch, and I've just made it sound like it might be easy. It's not. Because the kind of self-awareness I'm talking about that really helps you be aware of what's motivating you, so you can be motivated by really pure, good, honest things, which will in turn lead you to authenticity, one of the roads to it, isn't easily won unless you get your issues out of the way that tell you you should be doing things, that you'll be less of a person if you don't. You see, behind terrific stress, any kind of stress, by the way, behind stress that is not used well, okay, because there's a stress that is used well. Do you understand that? I hope you do. I mean, right now, I'm a little on the tired side, and I've got a house full of company, and I love having them here, and I'm doing a radio show at the same time, and I got up early so I could get my thoughts together. All that stress, you know what? I love it. I was just talking to my friend upstairs who said that he had spent his whole life in service to a job he did not like. And he was asking me why did I love what I do? By the way, you're what I love about this. You. I love hearing from you, and it's wonderful. Good morning, Kat, by the way. And Mawasi, good. I'm so glad that you're with us today. Thank you so much for being. How lovely. Sometimes I forget to slide this over. It's a new program on this thing, or it works differently, and sometimes I forget to get my messages, so I just did it. Now I can get them for those of you all that are writing me. Okay, so we all must learn to handle stress well. Now, here's the other thing. I have people coming to me who have been meditators for a long time, and I say, good for you. I think that's just wonderful. The only problem I see is when you do that and that alone, and you don't ever self-investigate, you don't ever go to anybody that'll help you challenge your ego to get it the hell out of there and sit down so that your highest self can be opened. You're never going to get the ego gone. You'll get the ego child's mind pretty much gone. But it comes down to finding how you're wired and going, oh my God, that's quite the selfish wiring. Do I really want to do that? Because it's not getting me what I want, and it's certainly not helping humanity. So I think I'll do it a different way. And then we go, woo, I will. And a lot of times, just talking to someone like me who is going to force you into deeper levels, whether you want to go or not, you don't usually come to me if you don't want to go there. All of a sudden you go, wow, I just don't need to keep doing that anymore. And you start being well aware of your motivations out in the world. If there's something to clean up, we do. Otherwise, you live with better intentions. Now that gets you somewhere, you see? So if you don't handle stress well, it gets all muddled up because you are working from intentions that are not particularly good. They're selfish, they're self-indulgent, they're what your family did that you've never separated from, you see. You know, a lot of people just keep defaulting back to what their families did because they've never realized that they have other options. I'm here to tell you, you do. Now, to change this, to learn to handle stress well, you do need to quieten yourself and work from lower brainwave states. Let's talk about that for a minute. But you also need to do some sort of self-awareness. These things work together, don't they? And, you know, I'm all for people. I'm real confrontational, in case you all haven't noticed. My husband certainly has. You know, when you get to the point where you go, when you can be honest, come talk to me, you know, that's kind of confrontational in a marriage, but let's get to the bottom line, you know. I got things to do until then. I have a very good husband. He keeps me in line. All right. So those two things work together. Now, let me go back and talk about meditation for a moment. It's an important discipline and one I really love. You will reach a point where your meditations are not sitting there and focusing anymore on meditation or letting your mind drift, which is another discipline of meditation. You'll find that your life becomes a meditation. Oh, Pat, you're at the beach. Wonderful. Well, happy 4th to you too, darling. We have had 2 nights of fabulous fireworks. Not at our house, by the way. I'd shoot an arm off, but on the lake in which I live. It's been really quite beautiful and lots of fun to have my friends that are healthy and well and COVID-free with us. So it's been real special. Thank you, and I hope yours is too. So there's a really good, here's what I want to put on the table before we go into this discussion though. You can have God and therapy and personal growth work or anything else. You can use it as a device and you can fantasize about it instead of it being a real living presence, this God who is the aspect that you are of it in your life. How do I know that? I see people constantly that are doing that. And we make sure that is confronted. We cannot deceive ourselves if we're going to do this. We have to really be motivated. We have to really open the doors to our potential and to the God within. There's no faking this. You can try. But when I say that the truth comes out no matter what, I have the most wonderful client, and I love her dearly. But she struggled with this. She's the one that has forgotten all that went on with her dad. And every single time I talk to her for a session, she always says the same thing to me. She says, oh, this week was so different. Oh, I'm changing. Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And I said, you know, darling, every time you say that, nothing's changed. This is your self-deception. I want you to know that. We have talked about it at length. And she goes, oh, yes, I know. Next week? Oh, this week has been wonderful. It's all different. Oh, thank you so much. This is my life is changing. It's wonderful. You know that it's not, right? And it will work. And she goes, okay, it's not. But because she's been suppressing this about her father and her life, and she didn't want to go there. She didn't want to go into the hurt that it was so awful she didn't want to remember it. She has to do this instead. Now, the good news is we're finally at the place where she will hear it from everybody else. Everybody's been trying to talk to her about it for years, and she just talked to the hand. I don't want to hear it. Okay, hang on 2 seconds. I am going to turn some air conditioning on because here's my trusty remote. And that's just wonderful. Now I can be cool. When I get worked up with this material, anyway, I tend to get hot. I'm talking about important things to me. And so, in the summertime, midsummer, let's turn on the air conditioning. Okay. So I hope you're seeing in that discussion what we must do. We really have to be self-aware. We really have to investigate the self. We really can't give ourselves any excuses. We really must be honest with ourselves. And we've got to find out what that is, because you're not born that way. You're born as a loving, undeveloped whole. That means everything that you've ever wanted and all this potential and these wonderful things, great ideas, worlds of creativity and everything else are in you. You also realize that love couldn't be what it was. Now I'm talking about even a very good home. You learn that when your mother doesn't change you in a timely manner, that life is rough and scary and uncomfortable. You learn when you're not fed at a specific hour because your mother had perfectly fine things to do. You learn all sorts of lessons like that. You may starve to death because all time is now. You don't have a sense when you're an infant of the past and the future. All time is now, and whatever happens is going to last forever. And that's a part of you too. You see, that's a really fundamental, very elemental operating system in you still that we need to confront. We need to realize these things are not true and that you are now in charge of your life. But what child has ever grown up thinking they're in charge of their lives? They're not supposed to. You were supposed to have the issues that you have before you're 8 years old because getting rid of them provides the thrust to your potential. Don't you understand? Isn't that wonderful? So these things that we so vilify, I'm so ashamed because I do this, is actually when you release that energy and heal yourself from this, it's the thrust. It's the thrust to your potential. And your potential is what you have in you to make this world better and your own lives better. Now, so let me go back to talking about meditation. I said I would. I'm very fond of a kind of meditation technique. I've been through almost every kind of meditation. I studied transcendental meditation. I've studied lots of just different disciplines. I love to meditate. However, I do have my favorites now. And I'll tell you why they're my favorites. Because 40 years ago, when I was teaching some form of this or talking about it, I'd do a meditation like a guided meditation. And some people just they didn't like it. Some people don't like breath work. I don't particularly like breath work. It's too physical for me. And what do I struggle with? My physicality, right? And I just don't like anything that physical. There are many forms of meditation that are very physical, that are exercise and stretching and things. That doesn't do anything for me either. So there's one kind of meditation that's out here on the market, it has been for years now, that fits us all. One size fits all. When does that ever happen, right? And this meditation is brainwave technologies. Brainwave technologies. I have a favorite of mine. It's by Dr. Andrew Weil. It's called Sound Mind, Sound Body. That's W-E-I-L, by the way, Dr. Andrew Weil. He's the bald-headed doctor with the big old bushy beard. And the reason I like this music is it's brainwave technologies that is done in classical music, but the classical music is very tuneful and beautiful. Now, it's going to start you, I should go back. You've got 4 brainwaves that I'm talking about right now, okay? You've got beta, which is a very aware state, but also pretty frenetic. It's those ragged little brain waves when you chart them. That's beta. Beta is not where you do your best work. That may surprise you, but it's not, even though it's highly conscious. So the brainwave below that is alpha, and alpha is the peak performance brainwave. Isn't that something? It's the peak performance brainwave, slower sine waves, see? And so underneath that then is theta, And theta is associated with pre-sleep states. And then below that, you have delta, which is associated with deep sleep. Now, I'm really aware when I'm working on someone in a 2-hour session that I'm going in alpha, theta, delta. I'm going back and forth. I'm going back and forth a lot. Not in that order necessarily, but when I am retrieving information from someone, they're all in these different brainwaves. They're in deeper parts of me. All of these brainwave states, you will be happy to know, are more creative states than beta will ever be. These are the creative states. Now, what do I mean by that? Does that mean you can write a great book out of this? Possibly. Good for you. Go to town. But it also means that you live more creatively. And if you are indeed in charge of your life, and you are, let's give you every advantage, right? These brainwave states are superior to the beta brainwave state. All right, so what this technology does, and I think there's some other people called Tom Kenyon. He was a leader in doing this too, brainwave states, and Jeffrey Thompson is another one. You can find these people on the internet, and you can also find this Andrew Weil Sound Mind, Sound Body is the name of it anywhere, and it's beautiful. There are brainwave tapes that have thunderstorms on them. There are some that have ocean waves rolling in. There are, all different things. I particularly like this thing of Andrew Weil, and I because it has strong melodies. And I found that years ago when I started listening to it, that after listening to it for several months, all I'd have to do is think of the opening couple of bars of the first music on there, and I was in alpha if I got out of it. The thing that I like so much about these technologies is that they are going to train you to stay in these lower brainwave states. This is not a meditation that you listen to for an hour and then you're done. Do not in any way listen to these things in the car. Do not do that. Do not do that. Did you hear me say don't do that? Because they do put you in an altered state, and you cannot do that. If you're going to listen to them without, hi Lisa, good to talk to you today. I'm so glad that you're here. If you're going to listen to them and you aren't going to sit down to listen to them, because I think Andrew Weil's, and it's the second track that you want to listen to. First track is him talking. The second track is the music, and it lasts, I believe, almost an hour. You don't have to sit there for almost an hour. I want you to put it on and then go do something repetitive. If you're working at your desk, that's a lovely thing to have on in the background. You don't have to sit there and work really hard at this. Now, here's the thing. Your mind's going to jump all around, all around, all around, all around. Chinese call that the monkey mind. You know how little monkeys jump around in the cage? Okay, well, that's the way our minds are until we're in these lower brainwave states. So let that happen to you for 2 or 3 weeks. By the way, this only works if you're going to train yourself into these lower brainwave states, which is a much better place to live. You're going to have to do it every single day. Once a day, every single day. Every single day. Every single day. You're trying to communicate with your body. You're trying to say, I want you to be in this all the time. Now, let's be calmer all the time. Here, do this. And it really works, because in about 2 to 2.5 months, you'll find yourself living in these lower brainwave states. Much better place to live. Okay? This also gives you this wonderful ability to be an observer in your own life. So you're not down there on the battlefield having a fight with somebody. You're actually just watching yourself in relationship with this person that you're arguing with. And you're listening to God more, and you're saying what God says to say, and you say it. Usually it doesn't develop into much of a fight. Okay. Pretty remarkable stuff. So I think that meditation done the right way is wonderful. Once in a while, I will have a client who so fantasizes that I will say, sit down and listen to this tape and don't get up until it's over. But most of the time, I think we can have it on as long as we're not interacting with other people. If your kids are running through and all is chaos, that's not going to work. But if you're working quietly at your desk, why not have that on, you see? Okay. Remember, it's not meditation alone that does it. It's meditation along with self-awareness. Self-discovery comes first before self-awareness. Okay. All right. Now, these people are still holding on, and I don't know what to do about this. Let me just check on them to make sure that I'm right about this. See if I can bring them on. Hi, this is a 917 exchange I'm talking to. This is Martha. Can I help you? Hello? Hello? Okay, well, that's not going to work. I think that sometimes these things are, people have called the wrong number and they're on there as somebody to go to, and yet they're not. Okay. They're listening in the background. So, have we exhausted that subject? I think so. All right. Number 47. I think that change is big. So you've got to have courage to change. It's so interesting. We are fearful about so many things. We're even fearful about little things. Little things. I remember one about my mom, and she was a dear. You all would have liked my mom. She would have liked all of you. But my mother struggled because I think she was at heart a non-traditionalist, but on the surface she had a lot of shoulds, and she was a traditionalist. That caused her, I think, a lot of restlessness, Nevertheless, she certainly raised me to be a non-traditionalist. Here I am. This is such a little thing, and yet I think it's highly significant. My mom was reared a Presbyterian, so she celebrated Christmas, and she always had to have a green tree. That was tradition. But when all of these Christmas trees started coming out, they were pink and purple and green and silver and fuchsia. She wanted one. She did. It never occurred to her she could have one or two or three trees that were all different colors. And so she'd talk about it all year long. I'm going to get a pink tree this year. And when Christmas came, it was always green. Now, that's no judgment about my dear mom. She could do anything she wanted to do. But she just couldn't break with tradition. I found a pink feathered tree, and I always have it lit for my mom with the little lights on it. It's about that big at Christmas, because it was like, well, here's your pink tree, kid. It's no big deal. Do it whichever way you want to do it, right? That's such a little thing, and yet I think it's such an incredible metaphor for the way she and a lot of other people live their lives. They do what they should do instead of what they really want to do. You really want to break out and do fun things. I'll tell you another story about my mom, and this will show you who she really is. My mom was so open-minded and so dear. So at the end of her life, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and you can imagine there were a lot of feelings running around in her and in me that we just didn't know how to handle. Well, actually, I don't think he was ever diagnosed, but he had some sort of dementia. So I took a sculpture course, and I was having fun sculpting, just as a hobby. And in the first lesson. They said, does anybody know any old people? Because that would be a really fun bus to carve, you know. So I thought, you know, that would be great if my mother would come and do that. I asked her if she would want to, and she said yes. I called the teacher. He said, bring her. So there's my mother in this class, and we all work on, you know, her head and shoulders. And on the last day of class, none of us were really finished, and yet there was a nude modeling class, a nude clay modeling class coming in right after us. So the blinds opened up in the middle of the room to make it a smaller room. We made it a great big room, and so everybody was working on their things, and all of a sudden, in this mob of people, there must be 100 of us or 150 of us, this mob of people who were all working on their creations. I couldn't find my mom. I was finished. I was ready to go. I couldn't find her anywhere. Finally, walking around, the crowds kind of part, and there at the end of the room is my mother, just having the greatest whole time with this perfectly nude woman who is the model for the class that was after us. And they're just talking and they're having fun. And this was so mind-bending to my little brain, who thought of my mother one way, right? That when we were walking out to the car, I said, Mom, that was the funniest thing to see you sitting there just having the most wonderful time with this perfectly nude woman. And my mother said, well, why not? We're both models. I loved that. That was just the most wonderful thing. I thought it was just the cutest thing about her. It's a really sweet memory of her. Nevertheless, I go back to my point now after a little trip down memory lane, which is, dear hearts, you got to have courage to change. And it takes courage. Because all of us default to what has been. And what has been is only a fraction of what could be in your life. And sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's actually just there for the thrust into something better. We can't keep holding on to the past just because we want to belong. Just because that was our family and we'll never have another one, even though we want one from the bottom of our hearts. We can't not change because we're afraid of change. I'm going to tell you, and you will realize this, if the more you strip away of old issues of fear and lack. But all change is good. All change is just movement of God to what you want. But because energy takes the least resistant way, sometimes things look non-optimal before you get what you want. And you must stand there in the faith, knowing that this is not optimal yet, and therefore it is not the end. The energy's still got to spin out. See, a lot of times we get what we don't want because we're not letting go. We get scared. Oh, that looks like something that's going to hurt me, and we clamp down and we shut the doors, and it stays what it is. And you get hurt. Instead of letting the energy pass through, letting it pass through, letting it change, letting yourself deepen, let it go, and going towards your good every time. I think that's so important. We're so afraid of being hurt that many times we stop the energy too soon. And being there in your faith and in your courage is really important to develop, along with the skill that we've talked about earlier in this list, which is the skill of, and it is a skill, of being okay with not knowing. Why isn't not knowing okay? You're going to be all right no matter what, but we all, in our ego child's mind, want a guarantee from God. We're not going to get that. We're not supposed to live that way. This is supposed to be a divine improvisation where we are clear and good channels and willing to move when God tells us to move, and willing to investigate, and willing to grow, and willing to evolve. Keep learning. You see? It's a nice life when you're not afraid of change. You can't protect yourself and have a great life, because that's the opposite of the expansiveness, isn't it? I'm protecting myself. And so many people walk around, don't know why I've got a frog in my throat today, but there it is. So many people walk around and their prime objective in life is to protect themselves from anything that could hurt them. Well, let me tell you, hurt is part of life. Having the odd remark to you that hurts your feelings is supposed to be there for us to motivate ourselves to fix whatever it is, or to realize the damage in the other person and care about them and possibly move toward them or away from them, but care about them. It's very, very, very important to wake up, to have courage, to allow change and growth and deepening and wisdom and opportunity. Things don't hurt you your whole life. Things tend to hurt you in the beginning when you're doing this, because you're supposed to get it and dispatch it. And when I say dispatch it, do you realize that these hurts, these things in your energy, and they are in your energy, are there for you to work on? They're not there to hurt you. They are there for you to hurt on. You may need to stop some patterns that keep attracting this, you see? So we need for you to realize that's an option, because I think a lot of people don't even realize that's an option. What? I have a choice here? I don't just have to close in and protect myself? No, you just got to get the lesson and keep on. If you get the lesson, that's never going to happen again to you. That's why toward the end of this experience of really your perceptions, and you're waking up and you're being motivated by the right things, there's not much to hurt you anymore, because you've worked through it all. You're never going to dispatch things out of your energy field. What we want to do is put what has happened to you in a proper perspective, and we want you to understand it relative to the whole and relative to how people really were, and we want you to look at everything realistically, and then we want you to let that go dormant in your nervous system. You'll always be left with the memories of things, but you won't be left with the patterns of behavior that came out of the decisions the child in you made, the child's mind made. You'll be free of all that. But you're supposed to have that kind of wisdom, because how else are you going to change the world if you don't have your own personal wisdom, you see? I am a little concerned, and I do believe, now keep in mind where I'm coming from, I believe that everybody should have a right to live the life they want. But relative to consciousness, I always look a little askance at some of the new technologies that take traumatic experiences away from people. I wonder, I've not worked with anyone who has done that, but you do wonder if the wiring has been so cut that you can't get back that. Well, how are you going to, how does consciousness grow? I don't know. I know how consciousness grows relative to this, and it isn't cutting the memories off. It's letting them take their proper place in the firmament of you and God, which are one thing. When you release the energy from the emotional body, it's all mixed up and tied up with all sorts of things. Remember, in psychology, and I've given you experiences like this in the past, we make good things bad and bad things good sometimes, right? Relative to your healing, These things are weeded up like a garden. These issues you pull up and you get rid of them by having them go dormant. So that the things that you do want in your garden as a human being that's living from the highest self grow more plentifully and deeply and bountifully, like compassion for yourself and others, or forgiveness, joy, unconditional love, and much, much more. You can read about this in the book I have out there called The Life You Want. When you have cleared the emotional body of these things that are fixations, what's stuck is energy, that energy then actually goes somewhere. It goes somewhere into, where it goes is into the spiritual body, into the energetic body. It becomes part of that. That's why everybody wakes up spiritually, and everybody realizes they're spiritual being in physical form, not the other way around. That's why you start living in the moment. You become more mindful. You make this a good one. Yeah? And it's a much better place to live than having our emotions that should be signposts that to look more deeply, that there's something to get down there. But emotions should not stop our lives, you see. We should resolve these things inside. That's what this therapy does, energy work does, and we wake up spiritually. It's a nice life. Number 48. I think it's really important at some point in your process to find a coach that you can work with. Why? Because the ego child's mind doesn't want you to find the deepest levels of you. It's made a very nice life for you, you're saying. Even if you don't like it, by the way. It's a nice life to the ego child's mind because it just wants to keep you alive and safe and intact, but it doesn't care whether you're happy. It's the adult in you, it's the higher mind in you that says, I care very much whether I'm happy. Why am I not happy? Well, as long as the ego child's mind is in charge, you won't be, because it's choosing a very safe course of action for you. Not that what's outside of it is unsafe. This is the deemed safe course of action that the child perceived. Oh, there's a life to live beyond that. And the life beyond that, while you might slap a label like it's unsafe on top of it, it isn't. It's just different. It's just more expansive. You have more choices. More great things can happen. It's the open system, right? And you go, yeah, well, that's the problem. Is it? I thought that was why we were here. It's not a problem at all. It's what you want. It's part of your potential. You see? So, one of the things, and it isn't just because I'm a coach, I'd be telling you this if I wasn't. I think one of the really important things to do at some point when you find yourself really, really stuck is to find a really good coach. If you want some really good coaches, according to this methodology, I've taught some for the last 20 years, and they are all listed on my website, marthanovak.com. You can certainly call them, and they'll help you. Call one of them, email one of them. Or me. I don't want you to be afraid of us either. We're not going to make you do anything. We want you to be honest about what you're doing. That's all this is about. You can keep on doing it, but be honest about it. And I'm going to be working on you not doing what you're doing anymore, so you will choose something that is better for you and better for people around you. I have an example of that. At one point, I had a very dear client. I am still enormously fond of this man when I think of him. And he was a card player. as a profession, and he cheated at cards. And he felt bad about that. And he'd come to me and he'd say, I feel so bad about cheating at cards, but I'm not going to stop. And we had a marvelous time working, because this work will eventually get you to make better decisions, more caring decisions, better thought out decisions, instead of the ego child's mind jumping in there and wanting what it wants when it wants it and how it wants it, and the immediate fix. This is not going to be a life that's gratified if he continues to do what he's doing. It's a momentary fix of, I won, by whatever means. And it was immediate little tiny fix that he needed, right? But there was so much more to life than what he was allowing. And we would just talk about it, He'd come in and he'd tell me about, this contest or that, and how he cheated at poker. And it's like, okay, you feel like stopping this week? I'm not going to stop this week. Okay. And it gave me information. We would go into much deeper information about his family and why he had to do what he had to do. And one day, he stopped cheating at poker. And he hasn't cheated since. I think that's a pretty great story. I was proud of him. But I think it also illustrates how we work. I'm not going to tell you, and I'm not going to judge you about what you're doing. I'm going to try to get you to work within a range of normal. And then the next step is the range of your potential, so you can wake up and start using it. Then it's about implementing it all and being enormously gratified. You see, there's a difference between pleasure and gratification. You all that listen to me usually hear this. Pleasure is fleeting. Now, you should have a life where both of those things are in it, But pleasure is one of those fleeting things, I don't know when you're going to be listening to the show, those of you that'll listen after the fact, but this is the July 4th weekend. Yesterday was July 4th. We've had fireworks going off. They've been wonderful. I won't remember them next week. I've enjoyed them thoroughly. I will continue to enjoy them tonight. But I'm not going to remember them after this. It was pleasurable. No more. But you let me work on my book, and you let me learn new things about it, because I'm reading all these fine writers that tell you about how to write, and I'm listening to wonderful books on tape, and I'm reading my novels from people that are far better than I am, but by God, I'm learning from everybody. How fun is that? I am gratified. I'm gratified. I want that for you too. And gratification has to do with using yourself. Not just thinking about using yourself, but actually using yourself. I wish that for you. I want you to think about that. Okay. To find this, though, of this part of you, often we really do need help with the stuck points, because we just can't get to it. We don't know what we want. If you've got depression going on, it's like a table filled with great stuff, all of which you would like to have, and there's a blanket over it and you can't see what to pick up. We got to get that addressed first, don't we? Why you have to be depressed. What the physical, emotional, spiritual, and even mental reasons are for that. Let's find them. Okay. I'll also say one other thing, and that is about coaches. I know in my own life, coaches, therapists, I've outgrown people. It's too easy to start with somebody and to stay there forever if they are not growing. I knew that I was going to something quite different, which is consciousness is the goal here, not just feeling better. Feeling better is certainly a part of the goal, but I've always been interested in that goal. I couldn't call it by name in the beginning. I didn't wake up one day and say, I think I'm going to have a consciousness methodology. That's kind of the wrong approach. You need to just start working on yourself and see what comes up. So many people who are still in the ego child's mind say, I don't want to do this work because I don't want God to take me somewhere I don't want to go. But I'm going to tell you right now, you don't know yourself very well. Because when you start removing ego issues, you're going to go in the most fantastic realms that give you such fulfillment and satisfaction. You'll be so glad to be there. So don't let that old ego child's mind stop you and tell you no before you've even begun the search. Oh, for God's sake. Nobody is ever forced to do anything they don't want to do in this energy of God. You have these talents and gifts and abilities and unbelievable things open in you. And that's what I want for you. Okay. In this, now we're to number 49. In this self-discovery, we have to find out what you truly believe. Now you have a suspicion of it. You may even tell yourself what you truly believe in the middle of the night when you wake up and you're unhappy. It might propel you up to clean the refrigerator so you can what? What's the word? Avoid it. Avoid thinking about what hurts. The fact of the matter is that we're all supposed to change. So we need to get comfortable with that. We need to find out what we truly believe, not so it will have us dissolve into futility. Futility is already there if we're stuck. The belief in futility, but to show you a way out. You've got to know what you truly believe as a place to start from to know where you're going to go next. These things just simply have to be acknowledged and given to somebody like me who changes the energy. Those are great access keys. There are two parts to my work, by the way, and the work of the people that I have taught this to. And that is, you find out a lot of access keys. That would fall under access keys for me. And then I am quiet and silent while I do what we call the dive. And the dive is me listening to your body and to your God and mine. And going sometimes to the mental realm, sometimes to the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and getting all the bodies lined up in integrity about a subject or about, a lot of times people will say, well, I'm feeling so good now, I really don't have anything to tell you. And I'll go under something that's incredibly dynamite. And that's the next level of release. What does your body want to lose next to become your highest self more? And that's always, by the way, a very good session. What's the next level of release for this person? All right, we've got to find out what you truly believe, what the principles are you live by. What are your values? I'm not one bit interested in your rules except to get rid of them. I don't like rules. I like values, I like interests, I like principles. And you may think I'm playing with semantics here, but I actually am not. Rules are imposed on you, and you, while you might have come from a family like that, are imposing them on yourself. Rules are being forced on you. My husband has a very wonderful mom. I love her with all my heart. However, she's very OCD. She's got lots of rules, right? And so when I say to him, if I'm giving a dinner party, and I've got lots to do because, you know, women, I don't mean this in any sexist way, but the women I know are the ones that are giving the dinner party. My kitchen's so small in this house that there's nobody in it that can be in it but me anyway. So I'm being real efficient, right? 2 days before, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this. Well, coming from the background he did, where his mother had rules, he hears that as I'm imposing all these rules on him. And I'm just saying, I need that, and I need that, because I can't reach these things in my kitchen because it's kind of a vertical house. And I'd appreciate him pulling that down. Thank you so much for that. But I got to have this and this and this and this and this. And I'm in my efficiency mode, and he hears that as she's full of rules. You have to do it her way. She's not going to like it if you don't do it her way. And that's not true. I'm just saying what I'm needing right now. So I have learned that I can't just do that. I have to say, sweetheart, when you have time, I'm going to need that, that, and that. If you would get those down for me, I'd appreciate it whenever you're coming this way. If that's true. Sometimes I will say, now I hate to say this, and you know I haven't said this in a while, but I'm going to need that right this minute because I can't keep on if I don't, right? And then also I'm adjusting things. Well, he's not ready to do this, so I'm going to do this instead. It's about being flexible, and I think that's really important. Part of this is being flexible, being adaptable, not having rules. Rules are not adaptable. So part of this work is you better know what your rules are so we can dispatch them. You don't need rules. You certainly need values and principles. You might need a list of things that you want to get done. Certain things have to be done before these things can get done. I understand all that, but there are no rules. There are no rules that say you have to give Christmas at your house and a huge party. There are no rules that say you have to cook it all yourself. No, there are no rules for that, right? Everybody could bring a dish. You could go to a restaurant. You could do anything you want. You could go to somebody else's house. There are no rules here. There are no rules in how you clean your house. There are no rules in how you stack your pans. You know, you've heard me talk about that with Michael. Michael likes to stack pans. I just love that. I throw them in there. But I'm thrilled that he likes to stack pans. That's great. I'm not going to do it. Well, in the early part of our marriage, he thought I needed to do it. I'm not going to do it. That's not important to me. He can stack them if he wants. He cannot stack them if he wants. I like them that when they're stacked, that's just great, terrific. But I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do this instead. Or I'm going to write, or I'm going to help people. That's what I do. And because that's not something that I particularly enjoy doing, it's going to take me more time. I'm going to try to do it right for him. Life is about a lot more than that. So how we made an agreement, and it was an agreement that we're absolutely abiding by, which is he does that, and I do my thing when he has time and when he wants to do it, but he doesn't have to do it. You see? OCD, a wonderful thing. I want you all to realize that a really lovely exercise is to mix it up a little bit. Mix it up a little bit. One of my guests came in and said to me, because my sink was full of dirty dishes, because the washing machine was full and it was already 12 o'clock at night, you think I'm going to stand there and wash these dishes by hand? No, they're going to sit there. Dishwasher will be empty in the morning, and I'll put them in there in the morning, right? And she said, that would bother me so much. Okay, there's a rule there. And that's not saying that's right or wrong. She is entitled to whatever she is. I'm entitled. Michael's entitled. Michael's mother's entitled. Everybody gets what they want here. Everybody gets what they want. But you're listening to a show like this to be challenged to find out what your rules really are. Let's not have rules. It's not that I want you to throw them all out. It's just that rules give you a lot of anxiety when you break them. And I think you ought to find out what your rules are by mixing it up a little and breaking them sometimes. If you have anxiety, that's a marvelous thing for you to know. I'm a little OCD about this. I've got some rules around this, okay? I think I've told you this story too, but this is a great story. A gentleman came in who's a client of mine still. I just love him. And he was real mad because a car had cut him off in traffic, let's say the blue car. And he was furious. I'm sure it was dangerous, and he got scared. And he was angry. And I said, what really are you so angry about? Let's let's really talk about that. And he was so cute. He got real quiet. He thought about it, and he said, I got angry because, as irrational as this seemed to me, this man didn't care about me that was driving that car, for him to do something so dangerous. And the irrational part of Hugh, this man, was that he didn't even know this guy, and this guy didn't know him, right? But it reminded him of something his father did, where he interpreted when he was a kid as my father didn't care about me. So he was mad at this blue car, furious. And he said it was because I felt he didn't care about me. You remember, you only have 2 issues. Every issue you will ever have falls into 2 categories, and that's one of them. You don't care about me, and I never get what I want. Those are the 2 issues everybody's got. Every issue in the world that you're telling yourself, every pattern comes out of those 2 issues. Okay. Are they true? Only in your perception, only to your ego child's mind. So it's very important for us to analyze the elements of that and get you beyond thinking like that, because those things are not true. They were perceptions that you made from your ego child's mind when you were a kid. Now, let's talk about something else. Number 50 is to be enormously patient with yourself. I have people that come to my program, and they'll say, man, I want this consciousness stuff so bad. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And they just inundate themselves with stuff, and they try to push themselves through. And that actually is a deception of the ego child's mind. It slows you down. Because you're supposed to notice exactly what you're doing right now. And when you're healed today, you're supposed to notice exactly what you're doing tomorrow. And you're supposed to see it. You're supposed to deal with it. You're supposed to give it to your healer. You're supposed to dispatch it yourself. You're supposed to put it in some sort of picture. You see? Ultimately, what happens to you when you make some sort of transition into the higher mind, and you really do give up a lot of the ego child's mind, and there are, what you're doing is surrendering that along the way. And then one day something happens, and it can be this little innocuous event, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, there's a sense of seeing your life as the perfect whole. There's a sense of, if I died right now, it would so all be perfect. I get it. I finally get it. It is a profound experience. And you start living differently. Nothing bothers you like it used to. You get a larger perspective, and it is in place for you to use all the time. Doesn't mean you're not going to dip down into your ego child's mind from time to time. You will. But you'll get right back there again. And life is primarily filled with peace and gratification and balance. And all of you that are doing this work right now, that's what you're going toward, you see. And you're having these small surrenders and little things happen along the way, and it's all leading somewhere. Good for you. That's what I say. Because a lot of people out there in the world aren't asking the questions, aren't looking at themselves, are not self-inspecting. I'm very proud of you all. Really, I am. So, being patient with yourself is very much a part of this process. I think there is a life pattern that I call the seeker to feel good. The seeker to feel good. And the seeker to feel good is so unhappy, basically, without telling themselves they are, that they run to the next momentary fix. Run to the next momentary fix. It's like the guy that cheats at cards. He runs to this game, cheats. Momentary fix, feels good. Next one. momentary fix feels good. Okay? But how about your whole life? Your whole life consists of moments that feel good and some that don't. A marvelous arc of learning and growing and deepening and finding yourself enormously grateful for every single thing. If you can find out that while you're still reasonably young and not in the last few days of your physical death, that's a good life. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about when we talk about these things. We have to get over our fears of things and live a dynamic life from the highest self. So the seeker to feel good is actually seeking to feel good because they feel bad. But they don't stop long enough to realize that. And yet, when they're alone and quiet, they say, I have such a sense of futility. Where is my sense of futility coming from? Look at the way you live. There's a reason for it. And you don't have to stay in it. It is that you're in a process of not being real. How is that going to make you feel good? How is that going to bring you true happiness? Forget the gratification. That's not even on the table. You never find out what you're good at and how to gratify yourself, and you give yourself these momentary fixes on the surface. Consciousness is about being conscious. That means waking up to what you're doing right now, looking at it, seeing it, not judging it. So many people that I work with, particularly if they've come from a very traumatic family and they've got the histrionic thing going on, when I show them what they're doing, they'll go, oh, I can't believe I'm doing that. Oh, I just hate myself for doing that. Oh, it's like, cut the drama. You just do this. You think the rest of the world isn't doing this? Everybody does this. Do you want to continue this? Because it's blocking this, and this. I see it, they finally say. The drama has got to go, oh, I'm so bad because I do that. Are you? Oh, come on, give me a break. How about being human for a while? We all do it. We're human and divine. You're on a journey to go from your fear-based self, which is very, 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 very human, to the love-based self, which, by the way, is also human and divine. That's your journey. I'm going to stop there. We're going to take up where we left off. I think next week I will not be here. So I want you all to know that next week I want you to go back and listen to an archive program. Please do. Don't just say, oh, okay, good riddance to old Martha, but really go back into some of these archive shows on Blog Talk Radio and Facebook Live and see some things that we've talked about, because they are very deep and very important and very, on various subjects. They may be on partnership, they may be on business, they may be on branding, they may be on all sorts of things. So for God's sake, listen to those shows, all right? I'll be back 2 weeks from now, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to begin again on the same subject, talking about more authenticity and the blocks along the way, okay?
60 seconds.
I also want to say to all of you, thank you so much for getting the word around about our show. It means the world to me that our community grows, and you all are at the front lines of that. I have no means of getting to people that are interested in this show except through you, and that means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much for those sweethearts. I hope you all have a great week. If you need me, I'm right here. You can certainly contact me through my website, marthanovak.com. I am a .com now as a Novak. All right, kids. Love you very much. Dear God, thank you so much for lifting off some of these things that can go now, and
10 seconds.
And give us grace in its place. And so it is. Amen. Thank you guys for listening. We so appreciate it. And now we say, have a great week. Bye-bye.